It's a pleasure this morning to welcome Marc Klaas of KlaasKids Foundation to our luncheon. Mr. Klaas's journey as a nationally prominent advocate for child safety began in 1993 with the tragic kidnap and murder of his 12-year-old daughter, Polly. In 1994, Mr. Klaas founded the nonprofit KlaasKids Foundation, dedicated to stopping crimes against children. Today, the foundation's website, KlassKids.org, averages several million hits per month and is the internet's premier Megan's Law resource. In 2001, Mr. Klaas co-founded Beyond Missing, Inc., which provides America's law enforcement community with a high-tech Amber Alert application, as well as a free and secure website to quickly create and distribute missing child flyers. In addition, as most of you know, Mr. Klaas has been very involved in our own local missing child tragedy, the kidnap and presumed murder of Morgan Hill's Sierra Lamar. A tireless advocate for preventing crimes against children, he has shared a podium with President Bill Clinton, New York Governor George Pataki, California Governors Gray Davis and Arnold Schwarzenegger, Mayor Giuliani, and many others. He's also a regular resource for CNN, Fox, and MSNBC. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Marc Klaas.
Okay, cool. I hope this all works out well. I put this whole thing together and it should. Listen, everybody, it's my pleasure. Is this on?
Yeah, you just got to talk really close to it.
It's my pleasure to be here today. I thank you for inviting me. I think the one event, as Allison just mentioned, that brings me to this location is the kidnap and murder of Sierra Lamar. Therefore, the slideshow presentation is going to be basically dedicated and focused on the search for Sierra, and hopefully you will see the South County in ways that you've never seen it before as these slides progress. On March 27th, Sierra Lamar's family and the KlaasKids Foundation launched a volunteer search for the missing 15-year-old cheerleader from Morgan Hill. Sierra Lamar, as you know, has been missing for 271 days now. We're moving into 9 months that this child has been missing. Since that time, we have dispatched more than 11,000 volunteers on more than 1,000 search assignments throughout Santa Clara and San Benito County. Every Saturday, between 40 and 60 volunteers congregate at the Sierra Lamar Search Center, grimly determined to return Sierra to her family. One of your great ladies here, Mary Deering, is one of the fantastic volunteers. Every week Mary comes in, she searches, she cleans up, she helps the kitchen ladies. She's an amazing resource. She's a fantastic volunteer, and she deserves her applause. She absolutely does. She's a great lady. And she also is the one who invited me here today, so I want to thank you also, Mary, for bringing me into this wonderful forum. These volunteers, Mary and the others, oftentimes face dangerous terrain, poison oaks, snakes, spiders, raging waters, but you know what? Nobody's complaining. Not one person has ever complained. And in fact, we've had some terrible situations. We've had people that have pulled muscles, that have had massive bee stings. It's just been absolutely unreal, yet they continue to come back. It just blows my mind. In all of the 19 years that I've been involved in volunteer searches for missing persons, I've never seen anything like the response that has come out of this community for Sierra Lamar. Each and every one of those volunteers, those 11,000 people, has been fed at least once and oftentimes twice a day. This Saturday, they're going to be having the Christmas dinner for the volunteer searches, and one of the local churches is supplying everything for that dinner. Everything has been voluntary. We've had to pay for very little this entire time. It's just an extraordinary effort. Many of these volunteers have confided to me, and I firmly believe everything they say, that they will be there through the end of this effort, whatever that means. Obviously, there are those who are hoping that we recover Sierra alive. I happen to think she's probably dead. I think most people do. We're not looking for the same thing today that we were looking for back in March and April. But you know what? We don't have the same group of individuals looking either. We have people who could pass a search and rescue certification with their eyes closed at this point. These are dedicated searchers that know exactly what they're doing. They have their teams together. They come in, they get their assignments, they do their work, and they come back. And I'm a firm believer that given that kind of dedication and knowledge that we will come to the end of this case. We will find out what happened to Sierra and where she is. But in the meantime, Sierra's accused kidnapper and killer sits in the relative comfort of a segregated jail cell at the Santa Clara County Jail Complex. He eats 3 meals a day, and the police cannot question him without his attorney being present. He hasn't entered a plea since he's been arrested on May 21st, but he has since been charged with 3 other attempted kidnappings, which he will be arraigned for today. Despite a mountain of evidence to the contrary, the suspect maintains his innocence, and of course, these are his rights. He is innocent until proven guilty. He can murder Sierra, but the police cannot question him without permission. Instead, they must protect him, coddle him, feed him, house him, and give him an aspirin when he gets a headache. Or give him a heart transplant if he has a heart attack. Unfortunately, neither Sierra nor her family have the same rights. And in fact, I would suggest that they have absolutely no rights. The best that they can do is live with the fear of not knowing where she is and their anger at the injustice of a system that protects criminals and ignores victims. I've been there, I understand this. Their fragile emotions are obvious every Saturday, and Mary will attest to this. Every Saturday morning when they greet the volunteers at the search center. And in fact, Sierra's mother, Marlene, has told me that it makes her weak to go there on Saturday morning and see all of those cars in the parking lot, to know that she is not alone in her quest to recover her daughter. Then usually, she talks a little bit about Sierra, then she breaks down in tears. And she tries to do that without a lot of people present. She feels secure with myself and my wife, but other than that, she really tries to segregate herself so that people don't understand just how devastated she is by all of this. But I would imagine you could even imagine that. I know from personal experience that the worst part, though, is in the night, when the lights are off, when there's no distraction, and you have to face your thoughts, you have to fight your demons, and you have to struggle with a God who protects the guilty as he seemingly disposes of the innocent. Now, I'm not saying that's true, but that certainly is the way you look at it from their side of the mirror. The U.S. Constitution provides a long list of rights for individuals that are accused of committing crimes. The Bill of Rights is full of them. The word victim does not exist in the U.S. Constitution. It just simply isn't there. In California, we have a whole series of rights for victims. Each and every one of them has been passed through the initiative process, through propositions on the ballot. Our legislature, our elected officials have done nothing for victims. The people of California, understanding that they may someday be victims themselves, supports the needs of victims. And it's another disconnect here. Really, it's a disconnect between government and what people want and what people need. But that having been said, with all of the rights that are provided to us by the state constitution, by state statute, by the laws of California, we will never have equity as victims in these United States until and unless we have a Victims' Rights Amendment in the United States Constitution. An amendment that gives us the right to be treated with dignity, with respect, with the ability to go to court hearings, with the ability to participate in the process, with the ability to know when plea deals are being reached with those individuals who have victimized us and/or our families. Sierra Lamar, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately is not the only case that the KlassKids Foundation is involved in. In the year 2012, KlassKids Search and Rescue provided services and assistance in 83 cases of missing and/or trafficked persons. In 23 cases, KlassKids Search and Rescue provided search and rescue services. 17 cases of these cases have been resolved, 6 of them remain open. One of the cases that KlassKids worked on in the year 2012, besides Sierra, was the case of Linnea Lomax up in Sacramento, California. Some of you might remember that Linnea was a disturbed 19-year-old co-ed from UC Davis who walked away from an outpatient psychiatric treatment facility one afternoon and then never returned. Her parents had thought that she had been trafficked. They were convinced, in their best case scenario, that she was being sold in a motel somewhere in the Sacramento area. I had conferences and calls with her father over several weeks, actually several months, and I ended up telling him that, Craig, everything you're doing for your daughter, I would do differently. I think you need to look at other scenarios. I think you need to look at the search and rescue option. Finally, he invited us in. We flew our search and rescue director, Brad Dennis, who Mary knows very well, in from Pensacola, Florida, and organized some searches for Linnea Lomax. Within the first couple of hours, we located the notebook that she was carrying when she walked away from the treatment facility. It was in a bush near the banks of the American River in downtown Sacramento. 2 weeks later, we returned. Her mother insisted on being part of the search and rescue operation, so we put her on a search team, and again, within a very few hours, we located the remains of Linnea Lomax. Unfortunately, her mother was the individual that located her remains. This poor young girl couldn't take the travails of life and decided that her best response was to end her own life. So her mother found her hanging from some low-hanging bushes at the banks of the American River. She cried for days, as you can only imagine. This is a deeply religious family. The family runs a Christian children's camp on the American River, so Linnea was very, very comfortable with that environment. She knew it very, very well. She had an affinity for it. We stayed up there for several days after Linnea had been found, and every time I would see her mother, Mary Ann, she would be crying. She would be talking about wanting to die. We told her to hang on. We told her that life could get better, that she could find better ways to manage her pain. The last time I saw Mary Ann, she told me that her prayer to God was that He allow her to find her daughter, and that is exactly what happened. So her finding her daughter Linnea's remains was God's answer to her prayer. Her head is in a much better place now. She's going to fight back. She's going to do what so many of us in this situation do, find a way to give back to the community that gave to her. And I applaud her and I applaud her husband. It's a wonderful family. In 2011, the KlassKids Foundation Search and Rescue Operation provided services and assistance in 216 cases. We offered search and rescue services in 47 of those cases. 36 of them were resolved, 11 of them remain open. One of the cases that we worked in 2011, again, was in the Bay Area. Some of you might remember the case of Michelle Lay. She was a nursing student out of Hayward, California. Well, actually, she lived in San Mateo, but was disappeared out of Hayward, California, at the Kaiser Hospital there on Tennyson. And her family reached out to us and asked us for assistance, and I'll remember this for the rest of my life. The first time I met the Lay family, Vietnamese immigrant family, was in a Best Western motel room off of A Street in Hayward. It was one of the grimmest environments I've ever been in my life. This poor family, 10 or 12 frightened, angry people without any direction, wanting to know what they could do to recover their daughter. The police had just announced, without telling the family, that this was no longer a missing person case, that it was now a homicide case, yet they'd not told the family that. They had not told the family why they were categorizing it as a homicide. So we started working with her family. And we first did what we always tell families in our operation. You have to repair your relationship with law enforcement. If we're going to be able to find your daughter, your sister, your cousin, we're going to need the cooperation of the police. They have all the resources, they have all the evidence, they have all of the information. That was a laborious process. It took 4 months, but it happened. Again, we found a search center in Hayward at a Buddhist temple that was available to us on weekends. We had none of the kind of response that we had for Sierra's case. We really got a lot of people from the Vietnamese community and people that had seen it and heard about it from out of town. I think the most we ever got from Hayward itself was maybe 2 volunteers. Now, I don't want to be too overly critical of Hayward, but I grew up in that dump. And I couldn't wait to get out. The best thing that ever happened to me when I was 18 years old was getting out of Hayward, California, and not going back until this crime occurred against Michelle. Again, on the 17th of September of last year, a search team found Michelle's remains. We weren't sure that they were Michelle's initially, but she was the only person that fit the vague description that it still existed, who had been reported missing in southern Alameda County. We used information to find her that had been provided to us by the Hayward police. Cell tower information and cell phone calling information. And it enabled us finally to be able to figure out where this young girl was. The one downside to that discovery is that one of the local television stations, and it doesn't really matter which one, it could have been any, the first thing they did was call Michelle's cousin, Christine, at the search center to confirm that remains had been found. Well, nobody had told Christine anything. Nobody had told her anything. We have stayed with this family through their ordeal. Just 2 days ago, on Monday morning, the judge in the case sentenced the killer of Michelle Lay to 25 years to life in prison, which in my mind is not nearly as harsh as it could have or should have been, but it's what the law prescribed and there was nothing that he could do. The judge can't be blamed for the sentence that was handed down. What he did do, however, was offer her a blueprint for possible parole. He told her that the only way she would ever see daylight again was to find a way in her heart to show remorse for the crime that he had committed. He pointed out that she had not done it prior to killing Michelle. She had not done it after killing Michelle. She had not done anything during the course of the trial. She had not addressed the family. She had not spoken to the family. That she seemed perfectly settled and happy with the crime that she had committed. And it turns out that the crime that she committed against Michelle was based on information that existed nowhere else but inside her head. Absolutely unbelievable. She somehow thought that there was a love triangle going on that never existed. Something that just didn't happen. To a young woman who was going to nursing school, who wanted to follow in her mother's footsteps, who wanted to do good things with her life, who everybody who knew her said only wonderful things about. Just like Sierra, just like Polly, just like so many of the victims in our society that are turned under by evildoers who then are protected by the United States Constitution. And ladies and gentlemen, it just makes me crazy. It really does. It's a system, and I understand people say we have the best criminal justice system in the world. I don't know that that's true necessarily. Maybe it is. But I think we can make it even better. And the first step towards that is giving victims of crime equity in that system by passing a constitutional amendment to the United States Constitution that enumerates the rights that I mentioned only a few minutes ago. I'm way off track here.
Amen.
Many, in fact, I sat across from a journalist just the other week in an interview that will be aired actually on Dateline. It's about the Michelle Lay case. It's going to be on Dateline on January 11th. The correspondent is a guy named Keith Morrison. He's kind of an iconic guy. You can't miss that face, you can't miss that voice, and it was almost surreal sitting across from him. But at one point during the conversation, he said, "Boy, you sure do grim work." And I said, "Oh, no, we don't do, there's nothing grim about our work. We're helping families. We're helping families that are so incredibly desperate, you can't even believe it. We're helping families that have an open wound in their heart because somebody is missing and they don't know what happened to it. And what we do is we bring communities together. We start search efforts for these people that bring people in to help the family, that bring people in and give them a viable volunteer opportunity, that bring people in to serve a common purpose of locating a missing loved one and hopefully bringing some kind of or at least closing a chapter in the ongoing grief of a family, and it works very well. This has changed people's lives, and I think Mary will tell you that. We have people that have never had a purpose in their life that are now dedicated volunteers that have found a purpose in looking for Sierra. We have people that couldn't handle the Sierra search, but have gone on to other kinds of volunteer opportunities that never would have occurred to them before. This is about people doing the right thing for the right reason, for the right person. And I couldn't be prouder of that. People say good things about my foundation, and they've been said already today. But you know what? We're only as good as our partners, our volunteers, the families that we work with, the organizations that we work with, the communities that we work with. And we've been very fortunate through the years to have great partners, which makes us look really, really good. And Mary, it's about you as much as it's about me. Because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be standing here today either literally or figuratively. And there's no question about that. But ladies and gentlemen, we do so much more than search and rescue work. This past year, we became very involved in 3 of the propositions that were on California's ballot. Number 34, number 35, and number 36. Nothing has ever touched me as personally as Proposition 34. That was the effort to overturn California's death penalty and replace it with life without the possibility of parole. Yeah, that's going to work out really well. I was so desperately concerned that the people of California were going to give my daughter's killer the gift of life that I put everything I had into that proposition. And despite being outspent by an enormous amount of money, out-of-state money, not even California money, the good people of California understood why the death penalty is there, why it's a just punishment, and why we need to keep it in place. Proposition 34, as we had hoped, was defeated. The other proposition we worked on was Proposition 35. This was an amazing piece of work. This was something that, in its 2 components, we have tried to get legislated up in Sacramento over the course of the last couple of years. One was to be much harsher against human traffickers, human sex traffickers, pimps, if you will. I would have made it stronger. I would have gone after the Johns as well. But it is what it is. You get what you get. It wanted to increase penalties for pimps. It wanted to give law enforcement training. It wanted to find the pimps so that they would fund victim services. And it finally changes the dynamic and the paradigm for those individuals who are being trafficked under the age of 18. That they're not in a consensual situation, that they are being exploited, that they're oftentimes coerced by violence, threats, or other types of intimidation. The other component of Proposition 35 was to update Megan's Law, sex offender registration and community notification, to update it into the 21st century by including internet identifiers, so that social networking sites like Facebook and MySpace would be able to use that information to scour relevant profiles and to scrub relevant profiles from their online communities. They just don't have that ability otherwise. We couldn't get that passed in 2 years up in the legislature. We would get somebody to carry the bill and we'd never get it out of committee. Well, I can tell you that the good people of California saw things very differently from our legislature, and Proposition 35 passed by a wider margin than any other proposition in the history of California. Something like 82% of the people thought that this was the way to go, and that's not the law of the land. Right on. The other piece of legislation, the other proposition, Proposition 36, was an effort to modify the 3 strikes and you're out law. Now there's irony in this. And first of all, let me talk a little bit about 3 strikes. 3 strikes was passed in the aftermath of Polly's crime. People understood what this was about. It was about taking career criminals off the streets so that they couldn't commit harm, based on the premise that a small percentage of recidivist offenders were committing a large percentage of the crimes in California. The current 3 strikes population in the California prison system is about 8,700 individuals. That represents 6.6% of those individuals of the entire prison population. Each and every one of those individuals has at least 2 serious or violent convictions on their rap sheets. The Legislative Analyst's Office estimates that the average 3 striker has 5 felony convictions. Each and every one of those individuals has had the benefit of prosecutorial discretion, they've had the benefit of judicial discretion, they've had the benefit of the appeals process. And if you ask me, if they don't bump it up on those thresholds, if they're still in the slammer, they're exactly where they need to be. And then finally, you are 50% as likely today to be the victim of a violent crime as you were in 1993 when my daughter Polly was kidnapped. 50% less. Yet somebody felt there was something wrong with that. So they tried to modify it. The law was written in Palo Alto, and it was funded by George Soros and other out-of-state entities, and because of the way it was written, it passed. I can't even believe it. But the irony of all of this is that nobody gets paroled to Palo Alto. Never have and never will. They'll be in Oakland, they'll be in Richmond, they'll be in Vallejo, they'll be in San Jose, they'll be in places where they don't have pedestals to sit on, where not everybody is a multimillionaire because they either worked very hard or got very lucky at some point during the tech revolution. Anyway, we also have a very vibrant print-a-thon, our signature child ID program. We call it the print-a-thon. We have taken it to, this last year, I think we did something like 25 events throughout the country. Since 1994, the KlassKids Foundation has fingerprinted and photographed more than 1 million children in America. We've done that all without ever charging a family a nickel for that service. We've done that without ever databasing any kind of information on those kids. Again, what we do is we work with community-minded businesses that will underwrite the effort so that we can come in and talk to families and encourage families to talk to their kids. We like to think of our approach to child safety as extending from the president's cabinet table to the family kitchen table. And there are many steps in between, many arenas in between, that a lot of good work can be done. And what we found, and the reason we started the KlassKids Foundation in the first place, was that nobody seemed to be doing anything about this issue. So we established a presence. We went for it. We did something good. Also this last year, we worked with the Attorneys General of the United States on a human trafficking outreach at the Super Bowl. It's the 4th year in a row that we have done that. We use the Super Bowl because it's the most iconic big city event in the history of this country. It's probably, well, because it is directed to one location, it's bigger than the 4th of July, it's bigger than Christmas in a lot of respects. And what we know is that whenever you have an event like that, whether it's the Super Bowl, the World Series, the Republican or the Democratic conventions, or big conventions, you're going to draw a lot of unsavory characters because people are there to party. And although we all party in one way, there are those that like to party in very different ways. And I think because of the work we've done with the Attorneys General and the work that we've done in the Super Bowl, people are starting to understand this issue in different ways now. We believe, and the people of California reaffirmed this with the passage of Proposition 35, that underage victims of human trafficking or underage participants of human trafficking are the victims of our society. that these are people that need to be looked upon as victims and need to be treated as victims and not to be arrested, not to have rap sheets built up for them, but to be provided with the kind of services that really aren't available for them through social services. I mean, it's great to give somebody food stamps, but if all you've known for the last several years is sleeping with 10 guys a night, and you're strung out on drugs, you sure need a whole lot before you can get to the point of utilizing your food stamps. So anyway, those are some of the things that the KlassKids have been involved in over the course of the last several years. We have huge plans for 2013. We have huge plans. The first thing that we're going to do, and we're going to be introducing a lot of things on the 3rd of January. The 3rd of January would have represented Polly's 32nd birthday. Unfortunately, Polly was kidnapped while she was still 12 years old. Let's see how we're doing here. The first thing that we're doing, and we're doing this right now, is we're rewriting our website. I'm calling it KlassKids 3.0. We put our first website up in 1995. I believe we may have had the first child safety website available anywhere. We reconfigured it and upgraded it in 2003, which was the 10th anniversary of Polly's kidnap. And at that time, we also introduced a Spanish language website, KlassKids Español. It was the first, and we didn't realize this when we were getting into it, but it is the first Spanish language child safety website anywhere in the world. It's unbelievable. And as I understand it, there are 20 million Americans, or 20 million people in America, that speak Spanish as a primary language. And before that, they had absolutely no outlets at all. Well, now, in 2012 or 2013, we're rewriting it again, and we're upgrading the format to WordPress. And this may mean nothing to anybody here, but what it means to me is I get to actually be involved in the content of my website. I get to update things when I want to and not have to beg a programmer to find a minute in his busy month to do it for me. So, I'm sorry, excuse me, man. I need a coach. So at any rate, we're going to be doing that, and with the introduction of KlassKids 3.0, we're also introducing a variety of new programs. We're working with a lot of technology companies now because I think that that's the way to go. I think in a lot of respects, the technology has caught up with people's vision of technology. The first thing that we're involved in is something called Polly's Guardian Angel. It is a smartphone app that's now available, and it's in the marketplace for iTunes, and the Android version will be available before the end of the year. It's a critical mass based kind of, it's a critical mass kind of an app. Anybody that downloads our app will be able to put information on their children into the application. And if their child ever goes missing, they'll be able to hit a panic button on the application that will then be distributed to every other app user within a 15-mile radius immediately. So you supersede the silliness of the Amber Alert. And I say silliness because it takes hours and hours to approve Amber Alert sometimes. The next thing that it does is within 10 minutes, it prompts you to call 911 if you haven't done so already. Within 30 minutes, it prompts you to contact the Polly Center, which is where we have volunteers located at Troy University in Pensacola, Florida, that are prepared to walk you through the rest of the process. It also allows you to upload your missing child's information to your Facebook feed and to your Twitter account. So it really gets stuff out there in a very dynamic and a very aggressive way without having to worry about anybody but yourself, making sure people get a hold of it. That's going to sell for $4.99 per family. And we will be doing a big introduction of that again on the 3rd of January. The second piece of technology that we're involved in is something called Cocoon for KlassKids. And I was just having a conversation with Mark about this. Cocoon for KlassKids is a cloud-based product that will again be available through the KlassKids website. And what we're hoping this will be able to do, and we may know more about this, there's a lot of confidence for the manufacturers of this, is to provide a safe environment for children online, an environment that crosses all formats, all devices. You know, for so long, the thing about child safety is if you want to protect your kids online, put the family computer in the living room and monitor your kids' activities. Well, how 2000 is that, or how 1999 is that? Our kids have tablets, laptops. If there is such a thing as a family PC anymore, it's probably in a box in the garage. They have smartphones, they have friends, they have neighbors. We're wireless. We're connected everywhere we go anymore. So if parents are going to be able to monitor their kids' activities, they're going to need something more than a pair of eyes in the middle of the living room, and we're hoping to be able to provide that. We're giving that service away. It's going to cost absolutely nothing. And well, that's all I need to say about that. I mean, I think it's wonderful that we're going to be able to do something without having to charge people for it. The third piece of technology that we're getting involved in is called Leo the Watch. And this, I believe, is the closest thing to the holy grail for child safety that has ever been developed. It's basically a GPS device. We all know what GPS does, and it's got many, many applications. This particular application is to be able to track where your kids are at a given time on an internet interface, to be able to overlay a map and see your children's activities, to create what's called geofences, so that if they go outside a particular boundary, the parents will be notified to know how fast your kids might be going down the freeway. You don't want to know. They're even loaded, not as fast as me, I'll tell you that. They're even loaded with offender information.
Wow.
There are several of these devices on the market already. Probably the best known one is Amber Alert GPS, and it's just a little device that you put on your kid. The problem with all of these, and this is what we learned in Sierra Lamar's case, anything that's got a GPS tracking ability to it, as soon as it's removed from the child, it becomes obsolete. It becomes absolutely useless. The police, the authorities found Sierra's cell phone within 2 days, but this is 269 days later, and we have no idea where Sierra is. This particular device is going to be a wristwatch. It's going to have a titanium band on it. So it's going to only be able to be removed by parents. There are going to be extra battery packs throughout the band so that it will be able to drop breadcrumbs every minute throughout the day without being concerned that the battery is going to run out. It's going to have a panic button on it that is activated by hitting both sides of the device. And you'll be able to know where your kids are immediately, and police will be able to hone in on kidnappers. It's going to be very obvious. The question is, how do you get kids to do this, and what's the price, what's the age limit for kids, or what's the age range you're looking for? We're looking at kids between 6 and 12 years old. Why will they want to wear this? Because it's also a cell phone. Why will they want to wear this? Because it's also going to screen Pandora. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I've signed on to be the national spokesperson for Leo the Watch. It'll be available for commercial purchase in early spring of 2013. And then the final thing that we're going to be doing on the 3rd of January is introducing the Klass Housing Fund. What we're doing is working with some real estate folks up in Marin County who are going to donate a portion of every sale to a fund that is dedicated to assist the families of missing persons with their housing costs. It's unbelievable. There's never been anything like this anywhere. They sell a lot of real estate up in Marin County. They have 400 agents in this company, and the owner of the company wants each one of the agents to dedicate $100 to each escrow to this account. We've set up some pretty strict criteria. For instance, you're not going to be able to get into this fund if your child's been missing less than 2 months. We know when the critical time gets. You're not going to be able to get into this fund if you're a registered sex offender, if you've got any kind of a serious or violent felony conviction, if you're not a primary caregiver. We believe we put this together very, very carefully. So these are some of the things that the KlassKids Foundation has been involved in and is going to be involved in. I think that 2013 is going to be an amazing year for us, ladies and gentlemen. In conclusion, And I know I've been up here a long time, Allison. Everything's good. In conclusion, in my heart, ladies and gentlemen, it's always been about Polly. But in reality, I know that it's about every child. And finally, I would ask you to join us on our mission of stopping crimes against children. And as you consider your charitable donations for 2012, during this season of giving, I would like you to please keep the KlassKids Foundation in mind. Alone, none of us has the power to affect relevant change. But by linking arms, by working together toward common goals, we can change the world. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, so much. It's been a pleasure to have you here this morning, and your talk was so informative, and I think we all learned a lot. I know I did. So I really appreciate that. And on behalf of SBRW, we'd like to present the KlassKids Foundation with a $250 donation.
Thank you.
And we also have Gail DeSmet over there with a basket, and it's going to be going around for the next few minutes to the tables. If any of you would like to contribute as well, that would be very much appreciated. If you can put it in the basket when Gail comes around. And thank you again, Mark.
Thank you.